I'm joined now live by Liberal MP Sarah Henderson from Geelong. Thanks very much for your company.
Peter, great as always to join you.
I want to get to some of the issues. I know you've got some local issues that affect you there, but let's just kick off, if we can, with this announcement that we just heard from the Prime Minister with, amazingly from a political perspective, David Gonski present. I thought that was a political win, no doubt about that, but also with Simon Birmingham, of course, the Education Minister there. Quick question on this one firstly, though. All this discussion about good debt and bad debt. Debt to fund this new school education funding, is that good or bad?
Well, obviously, the Treasurer has made the point that some debt goes towards economic growth and productivity, and I think that's a very important point to make. Taking out debt for, of course, very important investments like regional rail in Victoria. Look, I consider that obviously investing in education is absolutely critical, and what we've seen today in the announcement from the Education Minister and the Prime Minister is a strong focus on investing in young people in our future, massive increases in investment and, of course, a much greater focus on fairness.
OK, but is it good or bad debt if we're pumping more money into education? I mean, it's recurrent expenditure, so presumably it's bad debt.
Well, look, however the Treasurer might define this, I think it's very positive, the announcement that's been made today. We're seeing a 94% increase in government funding over 10 years. It's about 62% for non-government funding. But as I say, Peter, this is a very important symbol of this government, that education matters and fairness matters. All
right. The Badgerys Creek issue, that's more breaking news today. The government's going to be going it alone and funding that. That would naturally fit into good debt as infrastructure. How's it good debt, though, if it's not considered a good investment by Sydney Airport Group?
Well, Sydney Airport Group have obviously made their commercial decision, but we are very focused on building Badgerys Creek. We recognise that this is incredibly important infrastructure investment for this century, and having lived in Sydney myself, I know that the current airport cannot sustain the traffic in and out of one of course, the world's most popular cities. So I think this is incredibly good news. This shows that we are determined, no matter what hurdles might come in our way, we are absolutely determined to deliver on our promises, and I'm absolutely delighted to hear this investment announcement today.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised that Sydney Airport Group wouldn't look to go in that direction? I mean, you're a former commercial lawyer. You would think that from a sort of risk mitigation perspective, they might have wanted to look at this one, opening up the opportunity to a competitor for a second airport in a growth hub area like Western Sydney.
Well, look, I can't make that commercial assessment, but I am surprised that there hasn't been that sort of consideration by Sydney Airport Group. But the bottom line is, Peter, we've made a commitment to invest in a second airport. Unlike Labor, which dilly-daddled around for year upon year, we've made this very strong decision, which is so important for jobs, for investment, for opportunity, for Western Sydney. And frankly, this is a very significant decision for our nation. So I say fantastic work to Paul Fletcher, to the Prime Minister and everyone else involved in making this decision. This is a very significant day for our nation.
And just back on the education, reforms, I suppose, or funding package that was announced by the Prime Minister and Minister Birmingham. Minister Birmingham made the point that there'll be 24 private schools, I think he said all up and down the eastern seaboard, which will actually lose funding. That's a courageous decision, Sir Humphrey Appleby might have said, because it's one that's been shirked by every Minister and Prime Minister since Kim Beazley in opposition, I think, was prepared to look at that.
Well, Peter, there's a very important point to be made here. The original Gonski model, as announced by David Gonski, saw 2/3 of schools go forward and 1/3 of schools go backwards in terms of their funding, or perhaps be a bit more stagnant.
Yep.
Now, when David Gonski made that... When he made that announcement, Julia Gillard very recklessly said no school would be worse off. And that, of course, created a great deal of inequity. I mean, what we are focused on as a government is making sure that there is fairness across all schools, across all states, across the nation. And what Julia Gillard ended up with was not Gonski. It was a mishmash of 27 different state agreements with all sorts of different standards that applied. And this announcement today from the Prime Minister and Simon Birmingham is saying we want fairness, we want equity, and of course that's been endorsed by David Gonski. He's got to be conducting this review, and I think that's very, very important. So this is a great day for education.
There's been a budget in your home state of Victoria at the state level by the Labor government. They're talking about full funding, is that right, for regional rail projects? That's something to be applauded, I assume?
Well, if only it were true, Peter. Very regrettably, the state government here in Victoria has announced a $1.45 billion regional rail package. However, it's using Commonwealth funds that have not been agreed. So Daniel Andrews has not only misled Victorians, he's been very mischievous in not entering into a proper partnership with the Commonwealth on regional rail funding. Now, I'm a very strong advocate for investment in passenger rail. It's been a very big local push of mine. I'm very pleased that, of course, this is supported by the Prime Minister. But Daniel Andrews has been absolutely reckless. He's announced funding that he simply doesn't have. It's a lie, what we've seen in the state budget. And frankly, he needs to put his own money on the table. He needs to grow up, and he needs to put his own hand in his own pocket.
So hang on, so let me see if I understand this correctly. So the point is that he's announcing federal funds and not putting state funds in. Is the state budget in a position to be able to support this? Why wouldn't he do it? I assume he realises that electoral arithmetic requires regional seats.
I mean, what we've seen from Daniel Andrews, Peter, he's putting all of the rail money into the metropolitan areas, and he's leaving it to the Commonwealth to fund regional rail. We say that's not good enough. Under our asset recycling scheme, we need to work in partnership. We need to agree on these particular projects he's announced, and we've not seen a business plan. We've not seen any sort of comprehensive plan from the state. And, you know, this is just more politicking from Daniel Andrews. I will give you an example, Peter.
Sure.
Under the Murray Basin Rail Project, we announced $220 million. We asked the state to contribute, and they did. It was a 50%, 50-50 funding arrangement. Now we have that project helping farmers right across northwestern Victoria through to the Port of Geelong and the Port of Portland. But here we have seen Daniel Andrews take it upon himself to announce Commonwealth funding that he does not have. It's absolutely ridiculous politics. He does need to grow up. He needs to work in partnership. I mean, we are seeing from this Victorian government really a reckless government, one that gave away $1.24 billion when it decided to cancel the East-West Link project. This is probably, I think, Peter, the worst state government in living history in Victoria. They have shown a complete
worse than the Kane government? You can't be serious.
I am serious. I mean, we have never seen a state government like it here in Victoria, where we have a critical infrastructure project like the East-West Link, previously supported by both sides of politics, including the likes of Julia Gillard and Bill Shorten. Bill Shorten, of course, did not have the courage to stand up to Daniel Andrews when he cancelled this project. Just imagine tossing out $1.24 billion. And now we have seen absolutely a really poor commitment from Daniel Andrews and the Public Transport Minister Jacinta Allen, who've made this very misleading announcement. So what we do want to do is work in partnership with the state. We want to work together. We want to see their business plans. And under the Federal Infrastructure Minister, Darren Chester, I'm sure we can get there. But again, as we've seen from Daniel Andrews, really regrettable politicking, and as I say, he does need to grow up.
Just finally, Sarah Henderson, before I let you go, before getting to this interview, I made the quip that you should be on the front bench, but unfortunately women don't get a fair crack in the Liberal Party. Now, look, these things are always hard for you to talk about at the personal level, I get that, so I want to talk about this at the more general level. I get the impression that women in the Liberals' parliamentary ranks are getting a little bit sick and tired of what they see as an issue that has been talked about for a long time with limited action. Now, you may or may not be in favour of quotas. That can be a philosophical debate. I don't really want to get bogged down on that. You know, is there going to be a point here at which, you know, women are going to unite in the Liberal Party, not just in the parliamentary wing, but in the representative organisation itself, and say, you know what, this is getting to the point where it's become, frankly, farcical?
Peter, we certainly have a problem. We have 13 women in the House of Reps out of our 76 members, and that's not good enough. Many of us, like me, are in marginal seats, and it's an absolute battle, of course, to hold our seat, and I've just been re-elected after being first elected in 2013. We have seen a number of safe seats go to men in the Liberal Party, and I do think there needs to be a greater focus on equity and on gender balance. I know the Prime Minister is very concerned about this issue. Thank you very much for your personal endorsement, Peter. I do appreciate that.
I'm not sure it will help, just quietly, but it's sincere.
Well, you know, let's wait and see. But, you know, as women, we also need to say, yes, we do want to be promoted. We do want to play a role around the Cabinet table. And, of course, Malcolm Turnbull has brought a number of women into Cabinet. And I always feel that with Julie Bishop there in the Cabinet, she's the equivalent of about 5 women. But in all seriousness, we do need very robust targets. We need to take this more seriously as a party, and if we can't see some change in the next few years, we may need to have a look at quotas because, frankly, we just cannot keep on going the way we are. Mind you, I have to say, Peter, the women do an incredibly good job in our party, and on behalf of the government, we've got some wonderful female MPs. I think women make fantastic members of Parliament, great negotiators, but also very strong and very focused on their job. But I would like to see the numbers change and, of course, more women go into those senior cabinet roles.
To say the least, Sarah Henderson, always appreciate your time. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Peter.
Cheers.